Hi, I'm Adam in Wales and this is my board gaming vlog, and today I wanted to talk firstly about things that I've been playing recently and things that I've bought recently, but also about things that are coming up over the next few months, games that I'm excited about, seeing these new releases, things being announced at Gen Con, that big American convention, and things being announced as future releases at Essen Spiel, which is coming up in October. So it's only been a few weeks since I last did one of these videos, but I guess it's just that time of year. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about future games. But before we do, one of the games that I've been playing quite a bit is a flicking game called Ice Cool by Brain Games. Now I first saw this at the UK Games Expo, and Brain Games, I've been following them for a few years, and more recently I've been talking to them quite a lot because they're publishing one of my own games, Ruffling Feathers, which is coming up I think at the Nuremberg Toy Fair, hopefully, assuming it's ready at the beginning of next year. In Ice Cool, players control small wobbly penguins, flicking them around a school building. One player is the hall monitor. Their job is to bump into the other penguins who are bunking off class. In most instances, that means the player will make clumsy shots like this. But every now and then they'll pull off a brilliant jump like this. The other penguins will be attempting to run through doorways to collect fish tokens matching their colour. In most instances, that means that the player's going to make clumsy shots like this. But every now and then, they'll put a bit of spin on their penguin and pull off a shot like this. The game ends when all players have been the hall monitor once, and the most points wins. Now, if you've watched my vlog before, you'll know that I'm a bit of a sucker for flicking games. So games like Ice Cool are right up my street. I'm a huge fan of Crokinole, and Ice Cool sits sort of comfortably alongside that sort of thing. There's the game Cube Quest, which sits here behind me. I'm a big fan of that one, flicking those cubes around. Now the sort of the massive one in the genre, this Catacombs, this dungeon crawl. This is a tremendous game, much more complicated than the others, far more rules. It's really quite an investment of time, but brilliant sort of mechanisms in this one. And then there's the sort of simplicity of a game like Flick 'em Up, which I've only just recently bought. So I bought Flick 'em Up last week along with its expansion because I knew I loved these kind of games. The thing that had been putting me off is the fact this is quite an expensive package because of all this beautiful wood that's in it. But oh my word, has it been worth it? Let me show you how it works. In Flick 'em Up, players split into two teams of cowboys. A scenario is picked from the scenario book and the table is prepared accordingly. Cowboys move by flicking a movement disc and relocating. The disc may not hit anything or the move fails. Cowboys shoot by flicking a bullet disc. If it knocks a cowboy over, they take a wound. Each cowboy can take 3 wounds before they die, but they never take wounds if they're lying down on the table. Each cowboy takes 2 actions, moving and/or shooting, and then the process is repeated until the scenario objectives are met. Some scenarios will have players entering buildings, or dueling 1-on-1, or 2-on-1. Or stealing gold, or rescuing a non-player character. The set includes rules for rifles and dynamite and gallows scenarios, and it also leaves it open for players to create their own scenarios. So that brings me to the first of these new announcements. So Flick 'em Up, a new edition of it has been announced, Flick 'em Up Dead of Winter. So Dead of Winter, that zombie game, that really popular zombie game from last year or a couple of years ago, has been crossed over with Flick 'em Up, and they're producing a zombie flicking game using the same sort of mechanisms as Flick 'em Up. Now, I'm going to make an admission here. I have never played a zombie game. I was racking my brains thinking, have I played any of them? I know that I constantly hear on podcasts and see online that we're overrun with zombie-themed board games. I think I've just stayed away. I don't know, there's something about that theme doesn't quite work for me. But flicking stuff at zombies, yeah, I can get behind that. In fact, a flicking game, it wouldn't really bother me what the theme is. I could buy into it. It's so silly, isn't it? It's so light. It's so humorous. That, you know, I'm not a huge fan of dungeon crawls, but I love the game Catacombs because it's such a light sort of version of it. So yeah, let's have more. Let's have science fiction flicking games. I'd buy them all. whatever versions of flick 'em up they want to come up with in the future, I'm sure they'll end up on my shelves. So yeah, I'm pleased about Flick 'em Up, Dead of Winter. Although these mashups, they keep on surprising me. You know, I thought Pandemic Cthulhu was a joke when it was first announced, but no, apparently this is what's happening now. We're taking different themes, we're mashing them together to create these games. Well, okay, fair enough. As long as people keep buying them and people keep enjoying them, that's absolutely fine. So, mentioning Pandemic Cthulhu brings me on to another of the exciting new releases. And I mean, I'm not bothered about Pandemic Cthulhu, I won't be bothering with that one. But Pandemic the Cure, now I love a dice game. And I've only got a couple of cooperative dice games in my collection. Pandemic the Cure is the best, closely rivaled by D-Day Dice. Now, D-Day Dice is pretty much dead and buried at this point. I think the publisher has gone under. But Pandemic the Cure has now got an expansion coming up by Matt Leacock and Tom Lehman. Now, Matt Leacock, famous for Pandemic, of course, and his other cooperative games, Roll Through the Ages and the Forbidden Desert, Forbidden Island series. But Tom Lehman is known largely for Race for the Galaxy, but more recently for a series of dice games. So I think he was involved in one of the Roll Through the Ages games. I might be wrong, I think he was. But certainly he's known for Roll for the Galaxy, which is a tremendous dice game. Absolutely brilliant. And a few years before that, To Court the King, and then that was re-released as Favour of the Pharaoh, and that little, I spoke about one of his games recently in one of my vlogs, the game Cube by Amigo, which very few people seem to know anything about. So he seems to like these games with custom dice. I do love a custom die, a die that looks a little bit like a sweet or a chunk of, you know, a stick of rock. Brilliant, you just want to bite it. But so I love games full of dice, and Pandemic the Cure, an expansion, brilliant, looking forward to that. Let's have a look at Pandemic the Cure. In Pandemic the Cure, the world is threatened by 4 deadly diseases. Players work cooperatively to prevent outbreaks and find the cure. On a player's turn, they roll player dice which will provide them with resources such as planes, ships, treatments, and sample containers. These can be used to move from country to country, or to remove infection dice from a region, or to collect a sample of a disease. Each player has a unique character which comes with unique dice. These might offer new resources to use in addition to the standard resources. At the end of a player's turn, they add more dice to the map. Whichever character is played, rolling a biohazard is always bad, advancing the infection rate, and eventually it spawns an epidemic, and when an epidemic occurs, even more new dice are added to the regions. When regions become overloaded with dice, then outbreaks occur and dice spread to neighbouring regions. When 8 outbreaks have occurred, or when the infection rate maxes out, the game ends and all players lose. Players win, though, if they cure all 4 diseases, and a disease is cured if a player manages to collect multiple samples of those coloured dice and rolls them for a combined total of 13. Another of my favourite games, which is going to be coming out with something new, is Takenoko, which now Takenoko, a couple of years ago, had a massive sort of crate-sized special edition with these enormous pieces. I couldn't justify the price of it, but now they're bringing out the expansion, Takenoko Chibis, in that collector's edition. Suddenly I'm tempted. Takenoko Chibis is really good. It lengthens the game a little bit, but it adds all these new strategic options. It's got baby pandas and new tiles with special abilities and things like that, and a female panda that wanders around alongside the male panda and the gardener. Tremendous, and I can only imagine how fantastic the collector's edition is going to look, and whether I can justify spending that much money on it, I'm not sure. Let's see how well my games do when they're released, and then maybe I can splash out. I doubt it very much on a game designer's salary, but we'll see. So that is Takenoko by Bombix, which brings me to another new release, which is a new version of Dead Man's Draw called Carcasse. by Bombix with some stunning artwork. Now, Dead Man's Draw is a little game that's gone well under the radar. Brilliant little card game. Push your luck in a sort of Diamond, Ink and Gold style, except this is much more aggressive. When you take those runs where you draw cards from the deck and you think, well, should I stick or should I continue to twist? And if you ever get two of the same thing, I think it's two, or maybe it's three in this version. I can't remember. No, it's two. Two of the same thing. Then you go bust and you lose everything. But if you do manage to make those successful runs, then the cards generally attack your opponents and steal cards from them. This is a perfect game for Bombix's little sort of card game line, and the artwork looks fantastic. So I'm looking forward to getting a new copy of this called Carcasse. Although this original edition is really quite attractive in its own way as well. Another thing that pleased me was to see that at Essen, a friend of mine, not somebody I know well, but somebody I've communicated with quite a lot by email. I've done some play testing on his games. We've met up in Essen. An Israeli designer called Jeremy Kleskine. And he's made quite a few games that are starting now to filter through and come out. And I think there's at least 3 or 4 of them coming out at Essen this year. But 2 of them that I was a play tester on were the game Naova, which is coming out with Amigo Spiel, and Seige, which is coming out with AEG. Now, Naova, I think, will only be in German initially unless somebody else picks it up, but I really hope they do, because Naova was a game I had a lot of fun with. Not only was the prototype amazing, I was sent, so it's felt like a finished game right from the outset, but this is a card game where simultaneously players will pick a card and play it, and then they'll reveal. So that's familiar in a lot of games. But then some players will be eliminated from the next round, and then players will progress to the second round and the third round. Now these rounds happen very quickly, so player elimination isn't a problem. But every card will have a unique little power that alters the sort of winning conditions for that round. It's got this fantastic sort of chibi style artwork on it. I really hope there's an English edition, but you know, if you can speak German, it's well worth picking up a copy, and Amigo always does a good job with their little boxed card games. Seige is a card game, a bit like a sort of Stratego style game. Play a card, and then you're not sure what you're playing it against, but you find out by attacking it. So sort of hidden role, deduction, short time frame, again very attractive. Coming out by AEG, it's a good fit for it, fits well into that sort of love letter, coup sort of line. So I'm excited to see both and get a proper published version of each of them. Now, you'll also have noticed that I'm a fan of Bruno Catala. I've recently reviewed his game Abyss by him and Charles Chevalier, and that pairing have got a game coming out called Kanagawa, which just looks stunning. I know nothing about it apart from I love the artwork and I love the sort of theme of it. So I'm just flagging that one up. I'm going to be keeping an eye on Kanagawa. And another game I'll be keeping an eye on is The Great Dinosaur Rush by Ape Games, just because it's a great theme. Finding dinosaur bones and putting them together to make your own little dinosaur. Oh, I can just see how tactile, and what a brilliant idea for a game. May not be any good, I don't know, but it looks great. Does that bring me to the end of my list? Let's have a look. No. No, there's 2 more I wanted to mention. One is Ultimate Werewolf Legacy. Now, I mentioned before about weird mashups, but yeah, now we're getting Ultimate Werewolf, One Night Ultimate Werewolf in a Legacy version. I don't know how that's going to work, but it's just interesting, isn't it? All these Legacy games coming out, and now we've got, I mean, that's a tiny little game. How's that going to be? Fascinating to see what they're going to do with the mechanisms of that one. And I've never played Legendary, Marvel Legendary or Legendary Encounters, those sort of things, but I'm a huge fan of Dominion. I suppose the main reason I've stayed away is because I've always felt Dominion was the pure deck builder, gave you the deck building experience in its purest form, and it's often, I found the themed versions, I quite like Thunderstone, but the themed versions have tended to take me out of that mechanism. But I do love Buffy the Vampire Slayer as a TV series, and now we're getting a Buffy the Vampire Slayer themed version of Legendary. I mean, that sounds great. Buffy the Vampire, if it was a Buffy the Vampire Slayer themed game version of Dominion, then I would be all over it. But yeah, I can see that working. The only thing that worries me is the poster's got sort of photographic artwork, and I can't think of a single game that I've ever enjoyed that has photographs for artwork. I like a nice painting, a nice drawing. Even in something like Star Wars Imperial Assault, it's nice that all those characters are drawn, not just stills from the film. So who knows, maybe they'll surprise us and do some artwork, but I slightly fear it's going to look a little bit well, like a bunch of stills from the TV series. But who knows? Maybe not. Still, I'm interested. So, that's everything I've got to talk about and show you today. So thank you very much for watching. On Twitter, you can follow me. I'm at Board Game Wales. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Adam's Board Game Wales. Subscribe below this video, and there's a bunch of other vlogs and reviews on there. On Board Game Geek, I'm Adam78. Thank you very much for watching. All the best.